the third day, fifth day, 11th day, whatever, of World War III, now that World War III is underway. I'm sure you spend as much time researching this as I do, but I hope to give you a perspective today just to help you better understand what is taking place and when we might expect boots on the ground in Iran. Now that Hegseth says it's not off the table, President Trump says it's not off the table. But we're kind of meeting here right now this morning on K-Talk Radio in what may be the gravest moment in world history. It's more likely than not that World War III has actually begun. And with this unprovoked attack by the United States on the Republic of Iran, we have now entered into this spiral of escalation, which could escalate within a very short period to a time of global nuclear war. And it's there as the situation for Israel continues to worsen every day. The Samson move, launching a nuke on Iran. And I suppose Israel won't just launch one nuke. I suppose they'll try to launch several. And then what happens after that, who knows? But according to a report by Reuters, the Pentagon said that the U.S. Congress, shortly before this attack, said that there was no sign that Israel was going to attack the United States first. And I just loved Hegseth's comment yesterday that Iran started this war. So it was unprovoked. And with this attack on Iran and the assassination of their supreme leader, Khamenei, who has now been declared a martyr, of course, the killing was the equivalent of killing the highest leader of, say, Christianity, the Pope. And so we have now entered a dynamic which could lead to an escalation, which, if not stopped, will mean the end of civilization in a global nuclear war, followed, of course, by nuclear winter, in which all life on Earth will be eliminated. So, I was listening to the Pope, an excerpt from his Sunday Angelus, where he said, "Stability and peace are not achieved through mutual threats, nor through the use of weapons, which sow destruction, suffering, and death, but only through reasonable, sincere, and responsible dialogue. Faced with the possibility of a tragedy of immense proportions, I make a heartfelt appeal to all the parties involved to assume the moral responsibility of halting the spiral of violence before it becomes an unbridgeable chasm." He said that just Sunday. And there was discussion going on, of course, in Geneva between Iran and the West, between Iran and the Epstein class, and about Iran coming to the table and doing some of the things the Epstein class wanted. And just as what happened last June, when they were meeting in Doha, peace talks, Trump attacked Iran. And now during peace talks, this time, Trump attacks Iran again during the peace talks. So this U.S. attack on Iran is simply a repetition of the U.S. attack on Iraq back in 2003, which is now 100% documented by the testimony of active participants in that process, that all responsible, relevant U.S. officials knew ahead of time that neither did Saddam Hussein possess weapons of mass destruction, nor was there any threat to Iraq or other countries. It was a premeditated, willful act of mass murder. And likewise, this attack by Israel and the United States on Iran, June of last year, was based on lies that Iran supposedly would possess nuclear weapons within a few days, ignoring the fatwa by Supreme Religious Leader Khamenei that the aim to possess nuclear weapons was in contradiction to Islamic law and therefore would not be pursued. This might be the irony of all ironies so far, that the one person who was stopping Iran from developing nuclear weapons has now himself been nuked. the Ayatollah. And whoever his replacement's going to be, is that person going to be just as equally obedient to Islamic law? That is against the will of God to create a weapon that terrible? And so they will continue to not create a nuclear weapon? Remember, Tulsi Gabbard, a year ago, March of last year, Director of National Intelligence, Iran neither possesses a nuclear weapon, nor are they pursuing the development of a nuclear weapon. And the president, of course, said, I don't care what she says. General Daniel Kaine, according to sources, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, warned President Trump that a conventional attack on Iran and its nuclear facilities and missile stocks will not be successful. The president's own Joint Chiefs of Staff chairman, Raising Kaine, said just the other day before this started, this will not work. It will not be successful. And I guess the president had the same attitude towards him that he had towards Tulsi. I don't care what he says. What I'd like the president to say, you don't understand the arm-twisting power of Israel. All right, well, he didn't say that. But in the newest attack, again, the president pretending to be in negotiations, as I said, in Geneva, while preparing the attack. Apparently, even before the peace negotiations began in Geneva, the president already decided on it. Well, that goes back to December 29th, when Netanyahu was in Mar-a-Lago delivering the attack instructions to President Trump at that time to make sure that nothing was going to stop this war, even though it was going to take another 2 months for it to happen. So, according to various reports, including one from analyst John Helmer, Iran had agreed to negotiations, to the nuclear enrichment conditions, probably also agreed to stop backing Hezbollah, the Iraqis, and the Houthis. And it was unacceptable to Iran to give up its missile program, which, of course, obviously regarded as crucial for its self-defense. But then again, Daniel Kaine, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, warning the president, a conventional attack will not work. So now, in the meantime, news has arrived from various sources, the 2035 overmatch brief. It's a situation that was exercised from the Pentagon, has shown that the Chinese hypersonic missiles could have sunk the U.S. aircraft carrier General Ford, or USS Ford, and according to other contacts, the Journal du Manche, the French magazine, said that the Chinese have sent the same CM-302 missiles to Iran. The question is, do the Chinese have the key to deploy them? I don't know what you know about the CM-302 missile, but I've been studying that this morning before I got on air. This is a missile of a different variety. The hypersonic 3.3 Mach, or Mach 3.3, and it is variable in its pathway. Now, typical anti-ship missiles that would have been fired at the Ford, or the Lincoln in this case, in the Persian Gulf. 4 of these, not the CM-302s. If the CM-302s had been fired at the Abraham Lincoln would be on the bottom of the sea right now. But the missiles that were fired are fast-moving missiles that just hover above the water, but they have a direct straight-line trajectory. And the Aegis systems that are on these destroyers that surround the aircraft carrier can pick up as much as 1.5 minutes ahead of time of these incoming missiles. And so their anti-missiles can take these things out. So when Iran said they fired 4 missiles at the Abraham Lincoln, I believe Iran saying that. And when the Pentagon says that these things didn't even come close to the Abraham Lincoln, I believe, the U.S. military. Because under conventional systems, with this really cool Aegis system, defense system, that's probably true. They probably shot him down. The U.S. didn't say they shot him down. They just said the missiles landed somewhere else and didn't make it anywhere near their ship. But the CM-302 is different. And China has either delivered them to Iran for use against the Navy of the opponent, or they're in transit. And this is only going to make the American Navy move further and further away from the theater of war, because these things can't be shot down. Again, Mach 3.3, 3.3 times the speed of sound, and they are maneuverable, and they move just above the surface of the water, and they can detect an incoming anti-ballistic missile and can get out of its way in a matter of microseconds. And when you're flying at Mach 3.3, the slightest little change in the control surfaces of that missile can move it hundreds of yards off of its path, only to come back onto a direct target, to an aircraft carrier, destroyer, or whatever else. What does this do? As I said, it changes the game as far as Navy warfare is concerned. Chinese have been developing this for some time. Have you ever wondered why, starting a little while ago, the American Navy doesn't go anywhere near the South China Sea now? Could it be the CM-302 missile? And on top of that, there's other sources that are saying the Iranians have been given electronic jamming devices that makes it impossible for an F-35 to take off from an aircraft carrier. I don't know if that's true or not. I haven't been able to confirm that. But there are some sources out there that think that that's true. The sophisticated jamming systems that they have from the Russians and from the Chinese would make it impossible for an F-35 to leave the deck of an aircraft carrier. Now, when you see the success of the Russian jamming systems over the Ukraine, so that nothing is flying over the Ukraine anymore, at least eastern Ukraine, except Russian aircraft, I have a tendency to believe that. For those of you on the stream, I wasn't paying attention. I talked all the way. I'm sorry, everybody. I talked all the way through that commercial. I'm supposed to be watching that. I get a little wrapped up in myself, and so I miss the signal coming across my screen. I will try to be a little bit more dutiful in my attention to that. Now, it's also reported by many analysts who are extremely familiar with the military side of events that the current inventory of U.S. interceptor missiles can only last for about 1 to 2 weeks, while President Trump has announced this war may take 4 weeks, and that due to the massive delivery of weapons to Israel to flatten Gaza over the last couple of years, and the massive delivery of weapons to the Ukraine, American ammunition reserves have been reduced to maybe a very short period of time, maybe only 1 to 2 weeks. Whatever. It's also reported that apparently in the recent meetings, the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu with Trump in Miami, it was communicated that Israel regards the Iranian missiles as an existential threat to Israel, and that they have no choice but to attack against Iran and use nukes, whether America agrees with it or not. Now, naturally, China and Russia are very acutely aware of this. And if Israel uses nukes against Iran, will Russia and China be able to just sit back and see the destruction of one of their BRICS nations? Well, you got to take a step back here for a moment and see how we got to this point. At the end of the Cold War, the United States, and this was only, 35 years ago, everybody else recognized that there was this very realistic possibility for peace for the 21st century. And many people have spoken about this. I don't need to go into the list. But they recognized that there was a chance for a new peace order. People talked about a common European house. That an order of security could be created from Vladivostok all the way west to Lisbon. And that there was even talk about Russia joining NATO because there was suddenly no more enemy. But that historic chance to build a lasting peace order for the 21st century was missed because the neocons in the United States and the neocons in Great Britain decided to attempt to create a unipolar world based on the Anglo-American special relationship, using the British Empire as their model. And with it came the color revolutions, the extension of NATO 6 times to the east, contrary to the promise not to move 1 inch further that Baker gave Gorbachev. And then there was regime change in many countries, and the infamous interventionist wars that we fought and lost American blood, Afghanistan, Iraq, Libya, Syria, all these attempts led to a dramatic blowback whereby the countries of the global south, who now represent a global majority of 85% of the human species, decided that they're going to attempt to create and establish their right for economic development outside of a neo-British empire. This was essentially enabled through the rise of China, through the efforts of the Belt and Road Initiative, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, trying to establish a new economic system. And the recent security doctrines of the United States, such as the U.S. National Security Strategy, which is primarily about the Western Hemisphere, and the U.S. doctrines that followed that, have no doubt that the United States, even in the second term of Trump, intends to be the dominant force in the world and is obviously determined to dismantle all the efforts to create a system that would lead to equal partnership for all members. So the amazing thing is that the European coalition of the willing, Great Britain, France, Germany, are now not attacking the U.S. attack on Iran, a complete unprovoked act of aggression and total violation of international law, but saying that the Iran retaliation against U.S. bases in different countries in the Middle East is what needs to be attacked. And they even say you cannot always apply international law when you're dealing with such a situation, which of course is why international law was created in the first place. And in this way, they put themselves in contradiction to the Democrats in this country, who are sharply condemning the Trump's attack, and have these 3 European countries, France, Great Britain, Germany, have they lost all of what's left of any moral compass by arguing that in this particular case, where Iran is attacking American bases that launched attacks on Iran, is in violation of international law and can be neglected? I want to be absolutely clear here. We may already be in the middle of World War III. And therefore, this course has got to be reversed back to diplomacy. But who's going to believe anything the West says? Who's going to believe anything the Epstein class has to say to this axis of evil, Iran, China, Russia? This urgent appeal that is coming to the United Nations General Assembly to get back to international law and diplomacy. And this is no more true today in this age of thermonuclear weapons, when nobody would be alive if this current dynamic, this current situation plays itself out. I mean, what we have in front of us right now, this very day, 3rd day of March, 2026, is a test of mankind, a test of our species to survive. Do we have the moral fitness to survive? So I consider myself a loyal American. Does that mean that I just surrender moral responsibility of my government to do what's right? Excuse me, to whatever they think is right, and that I just willy-nilly line up behind them? The Trump and the Netanyahu administrations have betrayed human rights. They betrayed international law and the ideals and the constitution of this country and their countries. I mean, this liberation of Iran from the mullahs regime is just a pretext for expressing a lust of power that has absolutely become criminal. 2 nuclear-armed countries. The United States. We'll be right back after the break. However, for those of you on the stream, I'm going to continue. These 2 nuclear-armed countries, the United States and Israel, attacking a country that does not possess nuclear weapons, has pledged not to have nuclear weapons, and has even gone so far, as I've talked about in weeks past, agreed to store and transfer its enriched uranium to other countries so that it won't be in their hands for further enrichment. And the reality is that the U.S. government, by using Iran, a member of BRICS, is attacking the efforts of BRICS and their global majority partners to replace the financial dollar empire with a new architecture of mutual development. And it's turning the tables. And it's Iran that's being accused of being the aggressor, while it's under continual bombardment from the United States and Israel. I think, and it's not easy for me to say this, but my country's behavior in this situation is shameful. For Hegseth, before the attack began, to talk about the imminent danger to the United States from Iran, standing there in essentially the visage of George W. Bush, saying the same thing back in 2003, the imminent danger of Iraq against the United States. And so when Hegseth stood up to say that the other day, and President Trump saying the same thing, the imminent danger of Iran. To who? To whom? Who was it that was in imminent danger from Iran? They were in negotiations. We'll take our enriched uranium and put it in other countries' storage facilities so that it can't be further enriched to weapons grade. We'll cut back on the missile development. We're not going to give them up any more than a defending contingent in some army would give up their weapons if a greater power came in and said, well, if you're going to surrender and give us your weapons, we'll let you go home free. That theme occurs in the Book of Mormon a couple of times, where Moroni said, if you lay down your weapons and swear not to come against us anymore, you can go home. In today's world, you lay down your weapons, you're going to be cut to ribbons. And I haven't even got to this this peace council of Donald Trump and Tony Blair, which of course in Israel has become the war council, and not even mention the indecent crocodile tears that are being shed over the suffering of the Iranian people. So what does that bring us to? Arguing that influencers are demoralizing Kelly, Senator Kelly from Arizona, who was telling, and this is when we were committing piracy on the high seas in the South Caribbean against motorboats zipping around out there in the Caribbean Sea. And the piracy that we are committing against oil tankers coming to or from Venezuela. And Kelly said, just because you swore an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, doesn't mean that you have to commit acts in violation of that moral responsibility, even though you're commanded to do so by superior officers. So, of course, the conservative side has come out. They even want Senator Kelly arrested and thrown in jail for saying such treasonous things, when in fact it's essentially the law. So arguing that influencers like Fuentes, Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, this Yair Kleinbaum, writing in JFeed News, JFEED, one word, JFeed News, you can read it yourself, a news agency, said this: it's time to put Fuentes, Owens, Carlson inside a World War II style internment camp. He says influencers like Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens do more than create demoralization, provide aid and comfort to the enemy. They directly and indirectly incite soldiers to defy their orders. He said, we have reached a point where there is no choice but to take decisive action and arrest them. His quote continues, just as the Japanese American population was suspected of loyalty to a murderous Japanese regime that had declared war on America during World War II, these figures, including Jackson Hinkle and others, have, unlike most those Japanese who were unjustly profiled, proven that their loyalty is with the anti-American forces. Once the war is won and the threat neutralized, they can be released. I'm not making this up. Once the war is won and the threat is neutralized, we'll let them back out of the internment camps. Now, JFeed states that its mission is to, quote, become the leading English language news source for global Jewry. Now, some of you are familiar with Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Davis. He's got a very good podcast, a 4-time combat veteran, military analyst. He said in an interview on day 2 of this war that the United States had launched a conflict it cannot finish against an adversary prepared to fight back longer than Washington can sustain. So he pointed to the Omani foreign minister's appearance on CBS News the night before the attack, relaying that Iran had agreed to unprecedented nuclear concessions, zero reprocessing, elimination of stockpiles, willingness to discuss missiles and proxy forces. It was a golden opportunity, Davis said. And when he attacked the next morning, it made clear that none of this was ever about negotiations. It was always about war with Iran. So the killing of Ali Khamenei, Davis argued, was the clearest sign of strategic failure, rather than triggering regime collapse, as I'm sure you have seen now in the honest news feeds that are not fake news. It has consolidated the support behind the Iranian state, and it has ignited protests against the Shia Muslim world. Davis assessed that Khamenei likely chose not to seek shelter, definitely, deliberately accepting martyrdom. Even Iranians who oppose the Ayatollah have rallied out of anger at the attackers. Even Sunni voices. Remember, the Sunnis and the Shia have been fighting for a long time. The Sunnis consider the Shia apostates. But the Shia is what you have in Iran, it's what you have in Saudi Arabia. Most of the Islamic terrorist groups are Sunni. Not all, but most of them. And even those who oppose the Ayatollah as the second highest ranking figure in the Shia faith have rallied out of anger against the West, the Epstein class, for having killed him. And now the word on the street from Iran is kind of after the concept that Jesus taught, no man hath greater love than this, that he would lay down his life for his friends. Why didn't the Ayatollah fly to Germany? I mean, why didn't he fly to Pakistan? Why didn't he get out of Tehran? Why did he stay in his quarters, except that he was accepting martyrdom on behalf of his people? Unfortunately, a son, daughter-in-law, and granddaughter were killed along with many others in that attack. Now, I'm not here to bury the Ayatollah. I'm not here to praise it. I'm just saying that when Iran was meeting in Geneva with representatives of the Epstein class to cut back on most of the things the Epstein class wanted, and then to initiate the attack in the midst of those discussions, there's something wrong here. Now, on the military picture, Davis, talking about this, said the U.S. has 2 to 3 weeks of high-intensity capability, a timeline the American officials have essentially confirmed publicly, which he called a blunder, because Iran has spent decades stockpiling underground and can still produce 100 missiles per month even under sanctions. Its tens of thousands of drones have barely been deployed. And he described a video from Bahrain showing a Patriot interceptor missile missing an incoming missile on day one, and warned that once stocks run low, there's going to be nothing going up at all. Now, I was watching this continuing, I saw it on Times of India, a continuing attack at Bahrain, at the American, Bahrain, the headquarters of the Fifth Fleet. And I saw one anti-missile missile being launched in the direction of 12 incoming missiles. And it seemed like every one of them hit the ground. It looked like July 4th. Now, on day one, that didn't happen. The majority of incoming missiles on day one were taken out, whether over Israel or the American bases. Now it's the other way around. And there's a lot of information that's leaking out of Israel because Israel shut down any reports of what's happened to them in Tel Aviv, Haifa, even parts of Jerusalem. So Iran's strategy, according to Davis, is a war of attrition designed to outlast the American window. That's Iran's strategy. And the U.S. inventories have already been depleted by years of supporting Ukraine and Israel, and replacing them would mean stripping assets from the Indo-Pacific. And he doesn't think that the Pentagon is so quick to take out what they're building up to prevent China from taking over Taiwan and to move that stuff to these bases in the Middle East, all of which are getting bombed to hell. The latest dead, American dead, and it just galls me to use that term. The latest American dead are in excess of 500 U.S. servicemen, reported by many Eastern outlets. I don't think you're going to hear Fox News saying that. Davis said Iran's most likely next move is to prioritize American casualties, the pressure point at which is most likely to break domestic political will. Now, that was a quote from Davis. Do you understand what he just said? Iran now is going to concentrate on creating American casualties because that will, at back home here in the continental U.S., create enough pressure on Washington to stop this. And regardless of the Democrats that are bellyaching about the president with his dictatorial powers that he's assumed to himself, because it's Congress's role to declare war, not the president. They, even with all their bellyaching and hyperbole, they're still under the will of AIPAC and Israel as well. There are many members of Congress, as you well know, who have dual citizenship, which is why the direction and dynamic of our American government clearly is Israel first, America second, America last. So President Trump is already floating ceasefire talks, falsely claiming that Iran has asked to negotiate. Excuse me. Davis says there's no way they would ask for it, not after their Ayatollah had been assassinated. I agree. There's no way in the world. I think it was on day 2 that the president was asking for ceasefire because they got a response from Iran that so many experts said would happen. Even Kane, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, says this won't work. Don't do it. It won't work. So on day 2, President Trump is approaching through Italy a ceasefire talk with Iran. And Larijani, Ali Larijani, essentially said, go pound sand. Why would they ever believe one word that came out of the Epstein class? They've been lied to so many times, attacked twice in less than a year while they're doing peace negotiations. So the results of a new Reuters poll that came out between February 28th and March 1st from Ipsos, ipsos.com, says more, quote, more Americans disapprove than approve of U.S. strikes against Iran. I'm quoting from the article. The findings of the poll, which were released before Pentagon had confirmed that 3, now 4, Americans have been killed in the military conflict, also revealed that 54% said they would be less likely to support military action if it led to U.S. casualties or to a wider Middle East war. Generally, the poll's findings divided along party lines. 74% of Democrats disapproved versus 7% who approved. Among Republicans, 56 approved against 13% who disapproved. Now Iran is striking British bases on Cyprus. And of course, Starmer wants to get involved. On Sunday, what's this, Tuesday, just three days ago? This is Tuesday, just 2 days ago. Keir Starmer and Emmanuel Macron and Frederick Merz, the Three Stooges, have issued a statement threatening Iran with the use of military force in order to preemptively defend their interests. And the day before, they had issued a statement condemning Iran for reacting to the U.S.-Israeli attack. Now, the March 1st statement says this: the E3 leaders, I don't know what the E stands for, but it's France, Great Britain, and Germany. This is their statement. We are appalled by the indiscriminate and disproportionate missile attacks launched by Iran against countries in the region, including those who were not involved in the initial U.S. and Israeli military operations. Just listen to the idiocy of that statement. We don't like you responding to the attack against your country, but we really don't like you attacking military bases that weren't involved in the attack against your country. What these idiots don't understand is that Iran isn't just trying to preserve its national sovereignty. It wants the Epstein-class military forces out of the Middle East. And if it takes weeks upon weeks, they will bomb every last base that has not completely run out of air defense missiles, but are about to run out of air defense missiles. And with the arrival of these hypersonic anti-ship missiles from China. Now, listen, I don't want you to misunderstand me. This is not rah-rah for Iran. This is tears for my country that has gone terribly astray in its role on this planet. The United States was not under imminent attack from Iran, any more than we were in 2003 from Iraq. So the E3, the Three Stooges, say this: we call on Iran to stop these reckless attacks immediately. We will take steps to defend our interests and those of our allies in the region, potentially through enabling necessary and proportionate defensive action to destroy Iran's capability to fire missiles and drones at their source. Well, if the United States can't do it, what makes you think you can? We have agreed to work together with U.S. and allies in the region on this matter. Now, just think about if you were the military leader of Iran and you had thousands upon thousands of these missiles that you had been building over the last many years, decades, knowing you would eventually have to use them, and you are hiding them underground. Well, what would you do to hide them? And would you not allow, as happened in Natanz last June, word out that here's some nuclear storage, after you have already removed all nuclear material from it before the attack began, so that the Epstein class could say that it was completely obliterated? Wouldn't you allow some things to be discovered? At the same time, your vast number of missiles were still hidden? Well, this is just, I think, the target isn't Iran so much as it is this global system that's in transition. The global system that is moving towards the preservation of individual national sovereignty, as opposed to the colonialism for the last 500, 600 years of the West. And the U.S. military operation going on against Iran just cannot be reduced to a single goal. It's to stop this BRICS brotherhood. It's to stop this geopolitical function that would take the hegemony of the West and bury it once and for all. I think that's the true goal of this entire conflict. Now, within the first hour of the U.S.-Israeli strikes on February 28th, Professor Marandi, a Tehran University scholar and former advisor to Iran's nuclear negotiation team, gave an interview to Glenn Deason. Glenn Deason is another good source of information in this regard. And at the time, it was unclear whether the U.S. was directly involved or whether Israel was claiming joint credit to bait Iran into striking American targets. Maybe what they're doing is trying to provoke Iran to carry out an attack on the United States, Marandi said, citing this Politico report describing exactly that logic among the Washington policymakers. But on retaliation, he said unequivocally, the Israeli regime has attacked. We will punish it. And if the United States attacks, we will punish it too. Against Israel alone, Iran would pound it until it begs for a ceasefire. If the U.S. joined directly an all-out war, the Strait of Hormuz shut down, energy infrastructure across the Persian Gulf targeted, every country hosting U.S. bases treated as complicit, Iran would not waste missiles on empty bases. We're going to strike where it hurts the most. Noting that roughly 25% of the world's oil comes from that region, imagine what that is going to do to the markets. I haven't seen yet, actually, what that has done to the markets. Having an electric car, I haven't pulled into a gas station in a long time. And there's 2 gas stations I pass on the way to work. I meant yesterday to take a look at them so I could see if the price of gas here in America has moved or not. But apparently, Brent crude's already up to $80 a barrel. Apparently, it'll be $100 before the end of the week. Anyway, Iran is winning this war, and Washington knows it. That's why Trump is calling for a ceasefire, and the Iranians are telling him to pound sand. Now, another person I like listening to is Alastair Crooke, a former British diplomat, founder of the Conflicts Forum. And he described Iran's strategy as a 2-pronged sustained assault on U.S. bases across the Persian Gulf, using drones, short-range missiles, phased campaign against Israel designed to systematically exhaust their air defenses, including hypersonics with multiple warheads that Israeli systems simply cannot intercept above Mach 4. And what the Iranians have been doing is sending in hundreds of drones to exhaust the defensive capabilities of surface-to-air missiles, and then followed by ballistic missiles that can easily get through. He said that the Gulf states' air defenses are nearly spent, with Iranian drones now flying freely over Dubai without being shot down. And the U.S. Fifth Fleet facilities in Bahrain have sustained such enormous damage that one American base after another is being evacuated. And the Gulf states' entire economic brand, tourism, finance, airlines, has been shattered. He said the region will never return to where it was before. And then he said on the killing of Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, he called it an incredible error of judgment, rooted in the total failure to understand Iranian society. And rather than triggering a regime change, it has ignited fury across the entire region. Protests have stormed the U.S. Embassy compound in Baghdad, attacked the consulate in Pakistan, and then pushed Bahrain, which is 70 to 80% Shia, is now moving quickly under Sunni rule toward a potential regime change of its own. And it's the 3rd time in a year that the United States and Israel assumed Iran was on the verge of collapse, and it's the 3rd time in a row they were wrong. And the Pentagon is in a position where they're already throwing the White House under the bus, telling Congress there was no intelligence assessment that Iran posed an imminent threat. The war only had 21% public support in America when it started, and Trump's own MAGA base is just furious over the betrayal of his No More Forever Wars. One of his big campaign promises. No more wars. Read my lips. No more wars. All right, we're going to be going to the top of the hour here pretty quick. So I want to bid a fond adieu to my K-Talk audience. There it is. I'll see y'all tomorrow with a health show. And for those of you on the stream, don't despair. Don't despair. Even though Iran has flatly refused to negotiate, they've just simply been deceived too many times, even years ago with the killing of Qasem Soleimani, when he was arriving in Baghdad for diplomatic talks. But if this holds, if this continues, I think it's going to mark the end of the American dominance in the Persian Gulf. Because one American base after another is getting bombed. The obliteration that Trump said happened with the bombing of nuclear facilities last June. Well, the chickens have come home to roost. Keep your wits about you. I will see you all tomorrow with the Health Show.